Video B5, Consumer and Producer Surplus, Part 2. Remember that consumer surplus is the value that an individual gains above and beyond what they have to pay for a good. So, for example, Audrey has a $30 willingness to pay for the good, but it only costs her $25. So she's $5 better off, or has a net value of $5 when she makes the purchase. That is, her consumer surplus is $5. Zach is only willing to pay $20. The price is $25, so he would simply choose not to make the purchase. We can look at all of this using a single graph. We'll start with our usual axes of price or willingness to pay. And on the horizontal axis, we're going to be looking at each one of the individuals. So let's put them down in order. We have Lori, Audrey, Zach, and Calvin. With a market price of $25, that falls in between Audrey and Zach. We'll show it right here. The market price of $25. Let's label our individuals here. Zach and Calvin choose not to purchase the good because it is only worth $20 or $10 to them respectively, but it costs $25. Lori and Audrey both purchase, so we can write that we have two purchases that are made for each one of them. That's our quantity in this case. And to write in the consumer surplus, which is our question that we're trying to answer here, we can look at how much better off Audrey is. Well, that was the $5 we talked about at the beginning. That $5, which is 25 minus 20. And Lori is $50, her willingness to pay, minus the $25 that she has to pay, better off, so she has a consumer surplus of $25. So the total consumer surplus then is 25 plus $5, or is equal to $30. We can look at producer surplus for individual producers in the same way that we looked at consumer surplus for individual purchases. With our table here, we have 5 different producers and a market price of $900. Those who can produce the good for a cost of less than $900 will choose to produce. For example, Diane will incur costs of only $750 in producing the good, and if she sells for $900 at the market price, she will be $150 better off. And that's what we mean by producer surplus. What is the net gain to the producer when they make a sale? Using a bar chart similar to that which we used for looking at consumer surplus with specific individuals, we can start with the production of each of our individuals, starting from the lowest cost to the next highest cost, and continuing to higher and higher costs. We have 5 individuals here, each with different costs of productions. A market price of $900 that falls just above the cost of production of the 2 lowest cost producers, but is less than the cost of production of the 3 highest cost producers. So we know that the quantity that is going to be produced is going to be 2. 2 individuals will be producing in this market, Diane and Evelina. Let's label both of them here. And Carlos and the other higher cost producers are going to choose not to produce and sell in the market because it's more costly for them to do that than the revenue that they would get from their sales. So Evelina and Diane choose to produce, and the total cost of their production is $750 plus $500, or $1,250. Producer surplus is going to be the total revenue that they had coming in. They each sold at $900, so we'll have $1,800 minus $1,250, and the result of that will be a $550 consumer surplus. Just as we did with consumer surplus, we can look at it by adding up on the graph what is going on as well. If we look at the difference between the sales price of $900 and Evelina's cost of $500, we see that there's a $400 producer surplus for Evelina, and for Diane, there's the difference between $900 and the $750, or a $150 producer surplus for her. So the total producer surplus then is $400 plus $150, or $550, just as we concluded when we looked at the total of the sales revenues minus the production costs.